All right, guys. This is the fifth time I'm trying this. I've tried it a couple of times outside, but there's too much road noise, and then my neighbor threw a barbecue, so we were yelled out. I was trying to give you guys a better background than the one that you have, and I'm very sorry. Um, but my race, I'm obviously just white. Um, I didn't really think about it as a child. I had a very odd childhood. I'll get back to that. But, it's just kind of the default ethnicity. My dad has always said that we're Irish. About a year ago, he went to track down his long lost family in Ireland and found out that we're probably not Irish. But I, I always thought it was kind of silly. Like, I have no connection to any country but America. So, yeah, I kind of assumed that white is the default in America. Yeah, I guess you don't think about it until you get older, um, and you have to start thinking about it because it affects your friends. Um, so, as far as my other identities go, I'm a marathon runner. I ran a marathon in February. I'm running one. This was in Texas. I'm running one in Alaska in August and South Dakota in September. So, uh, yeah, that's what I do for fun. I listen to a lot of punk rock. Um, when I was younger, I had the whole Mohawk thing going on. And then I had my son, and I went back to college and became an accountant. So I'm an old punk rock kid who sold out to support his child because, someone had to. Um, all right, so as far as my really weird identity, this is me. I want to say I was like 4 or 5 in this photo. I actually lived in this house 3 months a year. It was the size of my living room. My parents and my older brother all shared this one room log cabin because my dad owned and operated a mining town 3 hours from the closest paved road. Um, yeah, there's pictures of that place in the winter. Um, so we obviously didn't live there during the winter, and it's just kind of an odd upbringing because there were no kids there outside of me and my 2 brothers, and we just ran around in the woods all day. We didn't have TV, and it's made me like a very weird guy because I understand that you need electricity, but like, do you? But you need running water. Like, people get stinky without running water. I'll attest to that. So, but conversely, the 9 months that I was here, I went to private school, and I was this weird miner's kid who spent his summer like reading and wandering around in the book in the woods. And I went to school with like a bunch of lawyers' kids who went to Six Flags and watched all the summer blockbusters and went to summer camps. And I just so I've never really fit in there. Um, it was weird for me. Um, so, 4 ideas that have impacted me from this the reading. So, white privilege was all obviously something that I was aware of, and for me, Brock Turner was obviously the ultimate example of white privilege. If you can hold your stuff together long enough to be polite to the cops, they don't know you're Brock Turner if you're white. Um, Brock Turner, by the way, the Stanford swimmer. Um, and well, I've come to understand it a lot differently because while we're all aware that racism still exists, like, you don't really, really understand how bad it is currently in this country um, until watching your videos um, and hearing you guys tell real stories about racism, and and so that's actually the greatest privilege. Is like I've dealt with racism, but you know it was always assumed because of the way that I looked that I was a racist, and um, yeah, I never dealt with the like really negative individual racism or structural racism um, during my lifetime. So um, I was also um, affected by the differences in wages and employment that are described on page 175, and just how this still exists. Like we were taught that this is all getting better, and it's actually gotten worse during my lifetime. It's hilarious. We're going backwards in so many ways, and it's very sad. Um, Something else that affected me was the wealth and housing gap, and I was aware that that existed, and I was aware of redlining and steering and all these things, because there are laws against them. I work in property, so like I have to know these laws even as the accountant. Um, but something that struck me was that minorities were paying higher mortgage rates like before the housing crisis, and that's ridiculous. They're supposed to be based on your credit score, your FICO score. That's a number. It's supposed to be fair. It Your credit has nothing to do with your race or ethnicity, and I just but apparently it does, and that made me really angry. Um, and then finally, how that affects the education system, um, which, like, I had thought about inner city schools and how they're problems, but I never thought about, say, Detroit, which is hyper segregation, 80% black neighborhoods, because for whatever reason, a house is less expensive just because it is in a black neighborhood. Uh, that is less funding that is going to a school, um, and it is really structural racism. I mean, the whole system is set up to keep people like me on top and keep other people oppressed, and that made me really sad. Um, and it made me think of a friend and that I had the first time I went to college. It was assumed that I'd go to college when I was 18. I went for 2 semesters. I dropped out. I was kind of indifferent to the experience. Um, and I had a friend who worked really hard to get there. And you could tell that he spoke a different dialect of English in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And you read studies that ESL students have a really hard time learning because it's hard to learn in another language. And like the reading made me think of like the idea that you have to go in a classroom and decode everything to your natural home dialect was really depressing. So as far as people who challenge me with the same identity as me, um, no one really has the same identity as me. And what I mean by that is, like, I am really hyper privileged, like on top of, you know, privilege on top of privilege. I'm very lucky. That being said, grew up without electricity for large stints of it, so I'm like weird. uh, So no one is exactly like me. So I don't get called out um, on any of my opinions by people like me. That being said, people different from me um, really like to challenge me um, about my identity. And I guess part of it is everyone assumes that because, you know, I was born into this amazing life, that I should just be automatically like really happy. I was born into the American dream. I even dropped out of college and I could go right back whenever I wanted. And yeah, I think there's like a little bit more to it than that, but I'm really lucky that I get to say that there's more to it than that. Um, but I do think that the purpose of privilege in the right hands might be to help the underprivileged become more privileged. Like I really don't deserve. I've done very little to deserve this wonderful life that I have, and so I should be helping more people who don't have access to the same resources that I do get their foot up. And so that's why I'm back in school is to find just something better than accounting to give back to the community. All right. So thank you very much, guys, for your time. I've had a wonderful quarter. Cheers.